Welcome to Rambam in Depth. Today we'll be discussing the Rambam Hilchos Tumas Tzara'at, Perik Tes, Halacha Zayin, Halacha Ches. The Rambam rules in Halacha Zayin, B'chol Yom Yireinos Negayim, Chutz M'Shabbos V'Yantiv. Every day you could see Negayim, you can examine the Nega, the blemish, except for Shabbos and Yantiv. In Halacha Ches, he talks about the regel, which includes Chol HaMoed, that you don't look at a Nega all Chol HaMoed. So the Mishne LaMelech asked the question, why does the Rambam divide Shabbos and Yantiv into two halachas? In the first halacha, it's talking about Shabbos and Yantiv, the actual Yantiv. And the second halacha, halacha Ches, he talks about Chol HaMoed. Why not consolidate it into one halacha? That's one of the questions he asks. Another question he asks, in Pirush Mishnayos and Negayim, the Rambam gives the reason why you can't do it on Shabbos, because there's a din on Shabbos, and Yantiv you can't judge. And this is considered a judgment. The kohen has to make a judgment. So the question is asked, why does the Rambam have to give that reason? The Rambam in Hilchos Shvisas Yantiv, the Rambam gives a different reason. He talks there about Chol HaMoed, why you can't check a nega, because it might, if the nega turns out to be tamei, it's going to turn the joy of the Yantiv into sorrow. And Yantiv, you're supposed to rejoice. So why doesn't he give that reason for Shabbos and Yantiv? Why does he give a reason about judging? And then he asks another question. Judging is only applies to Shabbos and Yantiv. It doesn't apply to the Negayim, because the reason why you can't judge in Shabbos or Yantiv, because there's a danger that you might write down the proceedings, the judgment. But the kohen doesn't have to write anything down. So the answer to all these questions is provided by Rabbi Zuckerman in the Kunter's base Aaron that he appended to the sefer of his grandfather, Simcha. And there he says as follows. That first of all, you have to understand that the reason why the Rambam writes that the reason why you can't check an ega on Shabbos and Yantiv is because of judgment. It's not because of writing per se, but because of some other similar thing to writing. The halacha is that the kohen, when he first examines the nega, has to draw a circle around it in order to make sure that it doesn't spread. If it spreads the next week, then the person becomes tamei. So he draws with something called Sikra, and dying on Shabbos and Yantiv is also forbidden. And therefore, that is the reason why you can't judge. A similar reason to judging in a courthouse because of writing. Here it's because of dying, by using that dye to determine how far the nega has gone. So that's the reason that applies only to the first time the kohen examines the nega. Why? Because the first time he examines the nega, he has to determine whether it's going to spread or not. When he examines the nega later on, he doesn't have to dye anymore. So that reason only applies to the first Hezger. Now, Chol HaMoed, that doesn't apply. Chol HaMoed, there's no prohibition of dying. According to the Rambam, Chol HaMoed is only midirabanan. But then there's another reason. The other reason is because of the Simcha of Yantiv. So that only applies to the second time the kohen examines the nega, because then he determines if the person is tamei, and he has to declare the person to be tamei tahar, and that can mar the Yantiv. But the first time that the kohen sees the nega, number one, it could be it's tahar. Number two, even if it's tamei, the kohen doesn't have to declare it tamei. The kohen can wait. So in Chol HaMoed, there's no issue the first time the kohen sees the nega. The issue of the judging doesn't apply, because the prohibition of judging doesn't apply to Chol HaMoed, according to the Rambam. And the issue of marring the Yantiv doesn't apply. Marring the Chol HaMoed doesn't apply, because the kohen doesn't have to say the person is tamei then. He could wait. But Shabbos and Yantiv, it's the other way around. Shabbos and Yantiv, the first time he sees the nega, it does have a problem, because he might have to draw the circle around. And Shabbos and Yantiv, of course, that's forbidden. And even if he doesn't draw the circle, there's a gzeira that he might be tempted to do it, because that's what he's used to doing whenever he sees the nega. So the halacha of Shabbos v'Yantiv and halacha Chol HaMoed are very different. Chol HaMoed, it's only the problem is only the second time the kohen sees the nega. That's when it can mar the holiday, not the first time. And Shabbos v'Yantiv, it applies the first time, and therefore he has to put Shabbos and Yantiv and Chol HaMoed in two separate halachas.